I've had this crush on my coworker for a few months now, and it's really not good. We only see each other in passing, and he's only talked to me once about something work-related. Even though we don't talk, we do look at each other sometimes, so we notice each other's existence. He's very outgoing and friendly with other people on my team. He's also very attractive. I enjoy being around him, but I'm way too nervous to talk to him. Honestly, I basically just admire him from afar. I'm not interested in a relationship with anyone right now, partially because I need therapy to heal from past relationships first. So I'm definitely not trying to be together with him. I just like him. This wouldn't be so bad, except it's become unhealthy for me. Whenever he's around, I get so overwhelmed that it's difficult to concentrate on my work. Sometimes I have to walk away and take deep breaths to calm down. I just get so nervous and preoccupied with my thoughts. I realize this sounds ridiculous, it is. I also can't stop thinking about him. It seems like I spend the entire day looking forward to seeing him, then once he's gone I feel empty and sad. I recognize this is really unhealthy and potentially creepy. I work with some good friends and I genuinely enjoy their company. I also like my job a lot, so it's not that work is boring without him. I'm actually a very talkative and happy person with everyone else. I really want to get over these feelings because they're useless and only hurting me. To be honest, this isn't the first coworker I've felt this way about. At my last job, I also had a crush on my manager and it was on the same unhealthy level. So I feel like becoming fixated on people is a reoccurring problem, and I really would like to know how I can change this pattern. My husband, Asian, and I, American, welcomed our firstborn 4 weeks ago. The baby is healthy, thank God, but I'm exhausted, haven't fixed my hair, barely able to shower and cannot sleep. My husband's family had been pressuring us to visit to meet the baby. I tried to hold them off as much as I could, but yesterday, I was surprised to find them standing on the porch. Turns out hubby invited them for dinner. I was embarrassed and felt like I wasn't ready for visitors, judgmental ones at that, cause the house was a mess, y'all. Anyways, my husband sat with them while I fed my son, then later I asked my husband if we should order takeout for dinner. He said no, because his parents would find this rude and unwelcoming. He suggested that I go inside the kitchen and prepare something, anything long as it's homemade. I said fine, then went and made some mac and cheese. The reason I prepared this meal is because of how easy it is. Once I served the family, my husband's mom looked at me and was appalled. I noticed something was wrong. She asked if I really found it appropriate to serve her and the family mac and cheese. I asked why not, and she went on a rant about how disrespectful this was and that I clearly have no experience in what is right and wrong when it comes to hosting. I said, "Excuse me? Who said I signed up to host an expected visit from them?" And she took it as in I didn't want them there. Her husband said they were just there to finally see the baby that I kept them from seeing for an entire month. That's a whole month of his life they missed out on. We had an argument and they decided to go home. My husband said that deciding to serve his family mac and cheese was more offensive than serving them nothing at all. I told him I was too exhausted to cook their traditional feasts that I was forced to learn from his mom. He took offense and said that I was being mean and disrespectful towards not only his family but his culture. I went inside the bedroom to stay with my son. My husband stayed on the phone with his family for an hour, then kept giving me the cold shoulder, and refused to eat what I cook in support of his family. I understand how some guests might find it offensive, especially his family, but I was just trying to make a quick homemade meal like my husband wanted. My husband Tim has a serious dairy allergy. I'm talking about an actual immune system reaction, not intolerance. His allergy is serious enough to cause acute enterocolitis, but he hasn't needed an EpiPen since he was a kid. I work full-time and also have some seasonal work this holiday season because Tim has been without work. And money has been very tight. As a result, I barely get to rest. The holidays are especially hard, and I found myself getting just 1 day off every 2 weeks for almost 2 months straight. As you can imagine, that day off means the universe to me. Now, Tim loves dairy, and will sometimes intentionally eat things which trigger his allergy. Lately, it's gotten out of hand, with him going from one risky meal every 4 to 6 months, to every 2 or so weeks. In fact, it always seemed to coincidentally line up with my time off, and I found myself spending my one day taking care of him. Last week, I finally asked him if he was intentionally timing it to line up with my day off. I fully expected him to say no, but he admitted that he was doing it to make sure that he'd have a nurse. And so he'd have someone close by in case he had an especially adverse reaction and needed a hospital. I was livid, and told him that he was selfish, robbing me of my rest. I said that if he made himself sick again, I wouldn't take care of him. I'm exhausted and I need to decompress. He didn't say much, so I thought he'd heard me. Fast forward to Friday night. I get home from work, and a few minutes in, Tim gets a pizza delivered. I ask him why, when I'm making dinner, and he shrugs. I ask if a large garlic Alfredo pizza is worth the pain, and remind him that I won't be giving up my rest day again. He smirks and eats an entire slice while grinning at me. I left it at that and went back to my dinner. Predictably, he got sick, profusely vomiting, retching and groaning from the intense cramping and diarrhea. I slept in the guest room to get away from the sound and smell. He called for me several times and I repeatedly told him no. Hours later, he was still sick and woke me up at the crack of dawn to go get him Pedialyte and meds because he was very dehydrated and still in pain. I told him to order it in and asked him to get out and let me sleep. He was still whimpering when I eventually got up to shower and eat. Again, I did nothing to help or comfort him. By evening, he was sulking, and by morning when I had to work, he was enraged. He yelled, and by the end of the day he told our friends and family that he nearly died and I neglected him. His family accused me of passively trying to kill him. His mom called, shouting that he could have had a life-threatening reaction due to my petty actions, and that I'm a shit wife for not minding his health. I'm starting to feel guilty because she's right and he could have been seriously hurt. My boyfriend of almost 3 years told me a series of white lies that to me seem more serious. Can't tell if I'm overreacting or if this is actually indicative of a bigger problem. My boyfriend and I have been dating for almost 3 years, living together for 2. We have a pretty good relationship, obviously with ups and downs, but we make it work and are happy. A little background on me and my boyfriend. I come from a single-parent home. My father was absent. My mother was and is by no means perfect, but she did her best with what she had. We were poor. Life was never easy for us, but we had each other. Since I was pretty young, I've wanted to pay her back someday. I've worked incredibly hard to be able to do so. I help her financially as much as I can and regularly pay her bills / send her cash. I'm also her only living child now as my brother passed away 5 years ago, which basically left me to help her. I don't care. I love my mother, and the right thing to do is to help her when she needs it. But is stressful. This is relevant because my boyfriend described coming from a somewhat similar past, and it is something we have bonded over. Having the mutual experiences seemed to bring us closer. He told me he also helped his parents financially, and we would often vent to each other about the stress it brings. I am not one to confide in many people, so having someone who I felt like actually understood me was meaningful to me. So here is where the lies come in, and I need someone to either tell me I'm not crazy and this is horror, or that I am crazy and this isn't a huge deal. I'm fine with either. When we met, my boyfriend lived in a condo in a pretty swanky part of the city. I live in the US Northeast. He told me he owned that apartment / condo. I found this to be interesting / odd because he was 28 at the time, and I know this property is upwards of $650,000 on the low end, and he was in an entry-level job for only like 2 years, so the numbers just didn't really add up. Whatever, maybe he's good at saving. But then, since living together, I never once saw a piece of mail for a mortgage payment, electric bill, taxes, nothing. Not for 2 whole years. Very odd. Also, when we started living together, he didn't have his room rented out in the former apartment yet, so he was still responsible for that portion of the rent. He would send a Venmo payment to his mother on the 1st of every month for his portion. I don't own property, but I can't think of a scenario where I would Venmo my mother to pay the mortgage on a property I supposedly own. Getting more odd. He would then go to his parents' house for an afternoon and come back really upset. Usually when I would ask why, it was because they were having financial problems and he needed to help them out. I totally understood this and supported him. He literally has cried on my shoulder about this many times. He tried to start a company years back and ended up getting into debt somehow. He told me this debt was $17,000 and that he paid it off. I'm confused because I met him only 2 to 3 years after the supposed debt accrued / company dissolved, and it was already paid off. He told me when he moved back home after the business failed, he was $17,000 in debt and living at his parents' house working at a minimum wage job. How someone with a minimum wage job pays off that much debt in 3 years, I'll never know. We got into a fight a few weeks ago and I finally had enough and confronted him about these things. He doesn't help his parents, they actually pay his phone bill, and this was all a lie. He doesn't own that apartment, he didn't pay off that debt from his company. He initially told me his parents helped pay it off and then like 3 minutes later, came clean. And said that his business partner paid it off, so I have literally no idea what the truth is there, and if anything, in my eyes. His parents are the ones who are financially supporting him. So now, I'm dating a 31 years old man who doesn't pay his own phone bill, was lying to me and / or completely fabricating aspects of his life for 3 years. And then when confronted about it, continued to make up lies and then came clean about them 5 minutes later. I'm obviously concerned that he could lie for this long, about fundamentally important things like our values, and so on. I sincerely thought I would marry this man. He seemed to understand me like no one else and to be a truly caring and genuine person. Now I'm having a hard time rationalizing actually planning a life around someone who would not only lie about their background and family etc. but also financial aspects. Aside from that, I now can't tell what is the truth and what is a lie. I've also noticed other things he has lied about, called him out on it, and he has denied it outright to my face. I see this as a form of gaslighting, as I know I'm not wrong, but he is trying to convince me otherwise. Am I overreacting? Is this a white lie that went haywire? Or is this actually a series of complete and utter bullshit used to manipulate me? And also, is it insane for me to actually consider a life with this man?